Welcome to D&D Basics. Today we are covering classes and subclasses. This is Master of the Game. I am Juce. Let's get started. Make sure you head on over to rpgjuice.com, where you can get caught up on the latest videos, the latest news, and blog posts from Juce himself. So in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, there are quite a few classes. Today we're just going to cover the ones in the Player's Handbook, and we're not going to talk about everything. We're just going to cover some of the basics and why you might choose one or the other. So I'm just going to read just what they are real quick so I don't miss anything. But there's Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. Each class operates differently, but there might be some things that overlap a little bit. For example, your Barbarian is probably going to be good at a lot of things that your Fighter is good at. Your Bard might be good at a lot of things your Rogue is good at. Your Druid, good at some of the things your Cleric is good at. Your Paladin, good at things that Clerics are good at, or your Fighter. The list goes on. Wizards, Sorcerers, Warlocks, similar, but completely different. On page 45, there's a great breakdown of all the classes. It doesn't go into the subclasses, but it goes into what the class's primary stat would be, what their saving throws are, their hit die, a brief description, and their armor and weapon proficiencies. It's a fantastic page, especially if you're new to the game, to get an idea for what you might want to play. Now again, it's on page 45. It's right before all the other classes, and it's, I think, doing a very good job giving you an idea. So I'm just going to go over the descriptions of each one, and then we'll jump into specific classes. So, the Barbarian is a fierce warrior of primitive background who can enter a battle rage. That battle rage is an ability that is amazing. Amazing. We'll get into that when we talk about the Barbarian. A Bard, an inspiring magician whose power echoes the music of creation. Bards have a way to grant inspiration for other party members, and we'll get into that when we talk about Bards. The Cleric, a priestly champion who wields divine magic in service of a higher power. Druid, a priest of the old faith, wielding the powers of nature, moonlight and plant growth, fire and lightning, and adopting animal forms. A Fighter, a master of martial combat skilled with a variety of weapons and armor. A Monk, a master of martial arts harnessing the power of the body in pursuit of physical and spiritual perfection. A Paladin, a holy warrior bound to a sacred oath. And that's important, because I think that fundamental thing right there is why Paladins no longer are bound by their alignment. A Ranger, a warrior who uses martial prowess and nature magic to combat threats on the edges of civilization. A Rogue, a scoundrel who uses stealth and trickery to overcome obstacles and enemies. A Sorcerer, a spellcaster who draws on inherent magic from a gift or bloodline. A Warlock, a wielder of magic that is derived from a bargain with an extra-planar entity. And a Wizard, a scholarly magic user capable of manipulating the structures of reality. So that's all the classes that are in the Player's Handbook. The very first one we're going to go over is the Barbarian. Probably one of my favorites. My favorite Barbarian I ever made was a Halfling Barbarian, and I liked him because his armor class was high, and he was fun because part of his backstory was that he was raised by wolves. So that was a lot of fun to play up, the whole being feral, and in fact, I think I did a bite attack that didn't really do much damage because you're just a halfling, but it was a lot of fun to play. So Barbarians get a really cool ability called Rage. You get to do it only so many times a day. It grants you a strength bonus for damage, and it allows you to be resistant to damage. It's really useful. And as you go up in level, you can, depending on what path you take at third level, you can either do the path of the Berserker, or the Totem Path, I believe, is the other one. Yeah, Path of the Berserker or the Totem Warrior. Both are good for different reasons. The Berserker is going to be a little bit easier, I think, as a newer player. You get to do a couple different things, like sacrificing yourself to always have advantage. In other words, you go into a frenzy and now you have advantage on all attacks. What I mean by sacrificing yourself is you're giving up defense. So now everyone who's attacking you gets advantage. So use that in a smart way and you'll be fine. You get intimidation and stuff with that, whatever. I personally like the Path of the Totem if I'm going with a Barbarian, and that's because you get to tailor it a little more. Every few levels you get to choose an animal. So, for example, a huge one that a lot of people for a long time said was OP was when you go Path of the Bear at 3rd level. While raging, you have resistance to all damage except psychic damage. The spirit of the bear makes you tough enough to stand up to any punishment. That's what I'm talking about when I say you can have resistance as a barbarian when you're raging. That is huge. So being resistant to everything except for psychic, I mean, there's not much that beats that. Your normal rage that you get gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. But all magic hurts you, fire, everything else hurts you normal. So when you take that Path of the Bear, I mean, you're basically a walking tank. You can walk through anything and barely be hurt. And as a barbarian, you already have a 1d12 to your hit points. So that's huge. Another ability that I think is kind of cool is you can do the wolf right there, which gives your friends advantage as long as you're engaged. So this would be taken instead of that resistance one I was just talking about. But I love the fact that it gives advantage to the rest of your party. This is something that can make combat extremely easy if you have a lot of frontline fighters. If you're giving 2 other players advantage just because you're standing there, that's huge. Especially if they're just great weapon fighter or a paladin with smite, being able to have advantage on those attacks are huge, like I said. So those are good. So that's kind of the gist of the Barbarian. I know it's a very brief covering. We'll get into more specifics on all these classes in future videos. Again, I just want to give you an overview of the most common things about these classes and what makes them cool. And most of it, I'm just going to cover low-level stuff because a lot of people don't play high-level games. Next up is the Bard. Now, Bard is typically an entertainer, musician, actor, a lot of ways you can play it. And if you're really into role-playing charismatic characters, the Bard is for you. No questions asked. I like the idea of just playing them as a musician. That's the most straightforward way. But remember, if that's the case, when you're doing your magic and you're playing your instrument, that's loud noise. If you're in a dungeon, as a dungeon master, they should attack you more. Anything further in the cave should be waiting for you if you've been playing music in the cave. That's just my take on it. So, barbarians are kind of like your rogue in the sense that they get a lot of skills. They get some magic, get some healing magic, so they can do some of those things. Bardic Inspiration is really cool. At low levels, it's a 1d6. As it goes up, it can be as high as a 1d12. Basically, you can give that to another player, and they can then roll that with their to hit or their saving throw or whatever they choose to, except for damage. And so that's a big deal. Giving that to your frontline fighters, giving that to a spellcaster who's going to use a really powerful spell and doesn't want to waste it is huge. So there is that. You get cantrips and spell slots. The Bardic Inspiration, I think, is the best one. You also get some ritual casting. So that's a good one that does not force you to use a spell slot, but you got to do things for a little bit. Jack of all trades, like I said, you get a lot of different... With the Jack of all trades, you get a half proficiency on any ability check you make that doesn't already include your proficiency bonus. So at first level, it's a +2. So you're automatically getting a +1 on all ability checks if you do not have that as a proficiency. So basically, you're good at everything. Expertise at 3rd level, Allows you to double proficiency. So that's big. So that's it. Now you get to choose a college for the bards. There's a lot of different ones over the course of a few books now. I'm not going to get into that, but feel free to look that up on your own. Depends on which way you want to go with your bard. Next up is the Cleric. Cleric is one of my favorite classes in all of 5th edition. Before 5th edition, I was not as into it. I felt very restricted by it. Every game I had played, such as 2nd edition, it always felt like a Cleric was just there to be a medic for the rest of the party. And that was in part because I played with groups that treated the Cleric that way. Hey, I've been hit a few times. Come heal me. No, don't attack. What are you doing? I'm better at that. Come heal me so I can do the attacks. So anyways, when I played it, my very first one was Brasswick Feeblehammer in the Provokers campaign over on A Fistful of Dice. And his name is Matt Click. He's now an editor for Wizards of the Coast, I believe, a freelance editor. He also is one of the founding fathers of Absolute Tabletop. And I will say I had a blast playing Brasswick. I was able to really RP him. It wasn't expected that I'd just heal people. It was a great group. Nate from WSD20, Michael Barker from Be a Better Game Master, and Tim Kearney from Tabletop Terrors. All great role players. Had a lot of fun with them. But again, my favorite Cleric I ever played was that. And actually gave me a true love of this class. He was a life Cleric. I think we played up to level 7 or 8. I can't remember exactly. And you can download him over on my website, rpgjuice.com. But anyways, Clerics are cool because not only do they get armor proficiencies, so you can bulk them up, and certain domains allow you to have heavy armor. They're also typically good at using weapons. So you can use a maul, for example, which I did, or you can use a shield and an axe. And just be beefy. You can be a frontline character for a little bit. You can dish out damage, but you can take it. The thing that really sets it over the edge for me in 5th edition, and why I love Cleric so much, is they have offensive spells that are good. I'm looking at you, Guiding Bolt. Guiding Bolt is a fantastic spell. It works great against undead like zombies. At first level, it's 4d6 damage, which is huge. I think that's one of the most powerful things anybody can do at first level in the game. Has a good range. I don't remember what it is offhand, but it's just good. Life Clerics are awesome in particular because when you do cast healing spells, as you level up, those healing spells will also heal you while you're healing somebody else. So that's huge, especially if you do decide as your Cleric to be a frontline character. Maybe you have an AC of 18 and it's tied for the best in the party, so you need to be up there to protect your squishier characters in the back. That's awesome that you can do that. So again, Clerics, great job, Wizards, by making Clerics more than just heal bots. They're fantastic. And again, I will cover Clerics in a future video more in depth. Druids. Druids in previous editions, to me, felt like healers as well. Didn't really interest me. However, they gave Druids really cool abilities at low levels like Wild Shape. There's 2 types of Druids. There's Circle of the Moon and Plant, I believe Circle of the Plant or something like that. It's a Druidic Circle. So let's see, what are the 2? I don't remember. Circle of the Land and Circle of the Moon, yeah. Circle of the Moon allows you to basically switch into an animal at will based on a CR level. And this is huge. And you can already do it because you get Wild Shape, but you can do it with more powerful creatures. Now again, a lot of people said that this makes your low-level Druid very powerful. And it does. If you're changing into a black bear or brown bear at low levels, not only do you get those hit points twice, but you got your normal hit points. You can do the damage and attacks that they do, and they have multi-attack. So you're better in animal form than your normal form. You can't cast spells at low levels like this, but later on you can. Druids are very good at low levels. They just are. They do a lot of cool things. The fact that they can add to your being beefy up front, or they can stay back and use some healing spells, or use some other cool spells like Entangle. All good options. Now, if they're doing these things in combat, like the Wild Shape, they're saving their spells for out of combat. They can do things like Wild Berry. No, not Wild Berry. Good Berry. I'm sorry. And they get some other cool abilities too. All nature based. There's Thorn Whip. Can use a magical whip. It's a spell. It's a cantrip, I think, too. And so you can then pull creatures closer to you. So that's a cool ability as well. I've had a lot of players use that. It allows you to hit at range, I think up to 15 feet. So yeah, just a really cool spell. Druids are good. No question asked. Shillelagh, another cool spell. But yeah, so that's Druids in a nutshell. They basically represent nature. They're really good. They can cast spells. They can do healing. They can be frontline fighters when they're using Wild Shape. And they are very useful to a party. Fighters. Fighters are probably my favorite class in most fantasy games. They are not as powerful in 5th edition as they once were, I feel. I used to think because they had specialization with weapons in 2nd edition that they were really cool. And that's what actually turned me on to fighters originally. The thing I like about fighters is you can give a fighter to a new player who likes combat and give them the champion fighter. Improved critical. It's very simple. You don't have to worry about a lot of mechanics. Action surge and second wind are some really good abilities that all fighters get. But then they can just focus on role-playing the character. And that's why I like fighters so much. So second wind allows you to, at one point, get a second wind to improve your hit points. So if you're hurt and you're really low on hit points, you can use your second wind ability. Boom. You got more hit points. You're not as bad. Action surge is awesome. So if you're fighting, especially as you get higher in level and you get more attacks, you can use an action surge and it allows you to do all your attacks again. Huge. First level or whatever. It's not first level. Second level. Because you don't get it till second level. You can then do an attack, but then you can choose to do a second attack by using your action surge. So that's pretty big. I love action surge. The other cool thing about fighters, you get more ability score improvements. This might not sound like much, but if your DM uses feats, you can take a feat for all of those. A lot of good feats. Alert. There's one that gives you a boost to your saving throws. I think it's extra proficiency in saving throws. I like that one a lot. You can take Magic Initiate. If you're going to do that, I would probably recommend taking like Cleric or something because of Guiding Bolt. And you get a cantrip, I think, so you can take whatchamacallit. There's a lot of good spells, but Thaumaturgy is a good one if you like to roleplay creative ideas to use Thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is a spell that does kind of like minor illusions. You can make sound really loud. You can play with colors, wind a little bit, temperatures, things like that. So Thaumaturgy could be cool. And Sacred Flame is good as a cantrip, as a ranged attack. What else? There was one in particular I was thinking of. Stabilize. That one's a good one. So if you got your Guiding Bolt, you can do 46 damage at range, which is radiant damage, which would be great if you're fighting undead. Which I think would be double damage against most undead, if not all of them. Not to mention, that's a lot of damage. Now, as you level up, the Magic Initiate feat's not as good. But anyways, we'll cover feats in a whole nother video. But again, fighter, great class, especially for newer players. I personally prefer the champion fighter for newer players who want to do a martial class. And I really think that's because you get some nice perks like improved critical. Later on, superior critical is great. You get a second fighting style at 10th level. It's just good. Battlemaster is great for your more experienced players because you get a lot of options. The combat superiority die and how often they can, do different maneuvers that you have to pick and then use at strategic times. Again, that's why it's better for a seasoned player. Really like that. It's one of the better classes in the game, I think, just because of the tactical advantages you can get. And then there's the Eldritch Knight. Eldritch Knight is pretty good. It's basically a partial spellcaster that can also do a lot of cool fighting stuff. There's a little more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. It's like a cross between a wizard and a fighter. Monks are great. Monks have some really cool abilities thanks to their key points. Basically hand-to-hand fighters. They do get some special weapon proficiencies. Unarmored defense is a good one. There's a lot of cool things they can do, though. Key points allow them to do things like fall from hundreds of feet. And I've never played a monk. I've just heard stories that monks are badass. And think of a kung fu movie. This is your character. Go out and play it. I'm not going to get into anything else with it, but I've never played one. I just hear they're really awesome. I've tried to encourage some players in my games to play one. Hasn't really happened. Paladin. Now, paladins are really good. Really good. Their resistances to undead and things like that, not even resistances, their abilities against undead are amazing. They get a lot of great things. They can heal. They get a fighting style. They're heavily armored. They can cast spells. They can do extra damage with smite. Paladins are probably the best short burst characters when it comes to dealing damage in the game. They just are badass. The aura of protection, different oaths that grant them different things. Your paladin can really be a one-man show in some of these games. For instance, Tomb of Annihilation, my wife was playing a paladin, and at times, the things she could do to the undead was amazing. So, again, if this is something that you're interested in, playing a Holy Avenger or a Crusader of sorts, Paladin's your guy. And Smite. I would say use it sparingly, but use it when you need to, because it's great. Rangers. Now, Rangers in 5th edition get a bad rep, and I partially agree with it. I like Rangers for the flavor. I don't like how good they are. So, for example, the Natural Explorer. Difficult terrain doesn't slow your group's travel. You can't become lost except by magical means. I hate that idea that basically you can travel freely no matter what. Let's see. If you are traveling alone, you can move stealthily at normal pace. That one's fine. When you forage, you find twice as much food as you normally would. While tracking other creatures, you also learn their exact number, their sizes, and how long ago they passed through the area. It seems like it's automatic successes in a lot of these. And there's a background that gives some things like that too. I don't like anything that's an automatic success. I like the idea of leaving it more up to a DM. So those are things that kind of bother me about it. Now, spellcasting for Rangers, I'm not a fan of it. I sort of like the idea of the spellless Ranger. They did an Unearthed Arcana for it. I did like it. I like the idea of having a favored enemy. That kind of goes with like the Paladin being so good against undead, in my opinion. So I don't have a problem with them being able to pick what their favorite enemy is. Some of their abilities, so under the Hunter archetype, I really like. I like the Horde Breaker. Once on each of your turns, when you make a weapon attack, you can make another attack with the same weapon against a different creature that is within 5 feet. I love that. I feel in 2nd edition, I think your fighter could do that if they killed a creature on their hit. If they killed a creature, they could then hit another creature next to it. Loved that. That allowed you to mow through goblins, at high level. There's a lot of cool things. There's some spells that are good. It's good. Volley is good as a multi-attack. I like the whirlwind attack. The thing that people criticize a lot is the Beastmaster. Having a Animal companion is great. Having to choose if the companion or you does the attacks, not so great. Just my opinion. That's something I've considered house ruling, and just saying, hey, if you have a companion, you can both attack. Because I don't think rangers are that powerful in the grand scheme. They're good. I think they're better than most people give them credit, but I don't think they're great. Just personal opinion. Again, I like them for flavor, and I would still play them. Rogues. Rogues are awesome in 5th edition. They're no longer just your lock-picking characters. They can be great in combat, especially the assassin. Your sneak attack is really powerful, and you get to use it a lot in 5th edition, whereas in previous editions, I played with a DM that forced us to spend like 2 rounds moving in combat as a rogue to try and get in your sneak attack. So you'd be like, okay, well, I'm sneaking in the dark, trying to get around to flank. And the next turn, I'm still flanking. Okay, now you're in position. Like, that wasn't very much fun. Luckily, I wasn't playing the rogue. But they get some cool stuff. They're partially skill monkeys. They are able to do a lot of cool things. They have expertise. They obviously get sneak attack. They have Thieves' Cant, which is their own language that they can read on walls and stuff like that. To secretly know certain things going on or where certain things are. So that's cool. Cunning action, you can use a bonus action to do dash, disengage, or hide. I did have a player try to abuse this, and so they constantly would do their attack, move behind a tree, and they would be a ranged attack, and then use a hide action. And they would argue rules. They're that kind of person. And I made the mistake of saying, look, originally when they were doing it behind little thin trees that clearly you could see them standing behind, I said, you have to break line of sight. If they can see you, it won't work. So once we were in a place with thicker trees, I couldn't justify it based on what I had said. Per the rules, if an enemy creature is aware of where you are at, you are unable to hide. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, how you want to use that, I think, is up to the DM, and I like that it's up to the DM, but sometimes if you don't have a strong backbone, or you're not real confident with the rules, it can be hard to adjudicate that. But anyways, Assassin's great. You get some cool abilities. Your Assassinate ability, Death Strike, instant death at high levels. Awesome. Sorcerers. My wife loves sorcerers. She never liked spellcasters. She never did. She played a sorcerer in our home campaign, and she loved it. And now she's played a sorcerer like 3 or 4 times. She likes it. She likes doing the dragon bloodline. And I think Aasimar is like her favorite race for it. So she's done Aasimar, dragon bloodline, or something like that. Sorcerer. They're cool. I mean, there's not a lot I can say, but they have sorcery points that they can add on to things and stuff. So that's cool. Next is the Warlock. I really like Warlocks. I think that some of the things they get are cool. They are also a spellcaster like Sorcerers. They make a pact, like I had said earlier. They get pact magic, but they get Eldritch Invocations. So some of the things they get from their pact are boons. So there's a Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, and Pact of the Tome. I like the Blade. You can use your action to create a pact weapon in your empty hand. You can choose the form that this melee weapon takes each time you create it. You are proficient with it while you wield it. This weapon counts as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. Your pact weapon disappears if it is more than 5 feet away from you for 1 minute or more. It also disappears if you use this feature again, if you dismiss the weapon, or if you die. You can transform one magic weapon into your pact weapon by performing a special ritual while you hold the weapon. You perform the ritual over the course of 1 hour, which can be done during a short rest. You can then dismiss the weapon, shunting it into an extra dimensional space, and it appears whenever you create your pact weapon thereafter. You can't affect an artifact or a sentient weapon in this way. The weapon ceases being part of your pact weapon if you die. If you perform the 1 hour ritual on a different weapon, or if you use a 1 hour ritual to break your bond to it. The weapon appears at your feet if it is in the extra dimensional space when the bond breaks. You can take a magic weapon and will it into your hand on command. I love it. Like, hey guys, we can't take weapons in here. Oh shoot. Like, all right, we're inside. Well, damn, we don't have any weapons. I do. Awesome. Allows you to do some cool things with role-playing, whether you're in jail or whether your characters are going to a ball that no weapons are allowed. You're in front of royalty. Whatever. It's really cool. Pact of the Tome is basically like a spell book thing. I think it gives you extra spells, yada, yada, yada. I like Pact of the Blade. That's my favorite one. So the invocations. Devil's Sight is one of my favorites. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet. I believe this is one of 2 ways to be able to see in magical darkness. If you use this, you must take that spell for magical darkness. Being the only character that can see in combat is a huge advantage. And if you multi-class into Rogue, you can sneak attack. And if you're using your pact weapon, it's a magical weapon for the sake of damage. So you can do a lot of cool stuff. So that's the big one that I really love when it comes to your invocations. In fact, I think that's almost a must-have for most. But there's a bunch of others, and you get them as you level up. I think I'm on the last one, and that's Wizard. So wizards get their magic from study. You have to have a magical book, or a magic book in order to be able to cast spells, I believe. Yeah, you automatically get a spell book. So all your spells are going to be in your spell book. There's a chance your spell book gets stolen. You got to prepare your spells every day. So there's a lot to it. For me, I like wizards. They get a lot of spells. The downside to wizards is that I feel like the different types of wizards aren't much different than each other. I feel like they're all very similar. The difference is what school they are. School of Abjuration, School of Enchantment, Divination, Conjuration, Evocation, Illusion, Necromancy, Transmutation. Those are the different schools that are in here. And while obviously you can tell there's differences, even from the name itself, like Illusion is going to be much different than Transmutation. Necromancy is going to be majorly different than those. But I just don't feel like you get anything that cool from any of them, when it comes to the classes. And I'm not a big wizard player anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter what I think. I'd be curious to hear from any of you guys who play wizards a lot below. What do you think about the different schools? What's your favorite type of wizard? Why? What is the most OP wizard? What is the least powerful wizard? I'm not really sure. I don't play them a lot. But yeah, so that's going to wrap up my classes and subclasses video. It's a long one because I tried to give an overview of all the classes more than the subclasses. I gave you some feedback on some of my opinions on the different ones, what I liked, maybe what I didn't like. Most of the stuff I do like. Even the stuff I don't like, I still enjoy. So would love to hear your thoughts below. Maybe you disagree with me on some things. Maybe there's some things I glossed over that you think I should have put more emphasis on. I'd love to hear below. Be sure to hammer that like button, smash that subscribe button. This was Master the Game. I am Juce. Game on.